What is the future of packaging? Well, that's the question posed to the panel of industry experts, led by packaging expert himself, Brad Barron. And after 25 years at Procter & Gamble, he knows a lot about packaging. Hello, Brad.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. So our theme, number one, how do we cut packaging costs yet maintain or increase delight? This is your topic of discussion?
Yep, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about the people you assembled for this great panel.
So this panel was actually fantastic because of the diversity of packaging experts. I've spent my whole career in packaging around the world. And when I look at this panel, we have people from all regions of the world. We have people relatively young in their careers, people with 40 years of experience. We've got people coming at this from the designer point of view, from the industrial packaging point of view, and from a commercial point of view. So, that was one of the things that was really fantastic about this panel, because everybody wasn't thinking in the very same way, which really led to a lot of rich and diverse discussion.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the diversity, which is fantastic. Walk us through the executive summary here. It looks like 3 key points for the takeaway.
So, in this panel, like I said, we were trying to tackle the perennial problem people have, which is costs keep rising, but packaging is part of the magic that consumers buy. And so you can't sacrifice that. And really throughout the discussion, these are the 3 themes that came to life. The first one is simply that there's always an opportunity to optimize. Maybe go a little bit lighter, a little bit thinner, a little bit better dimensions, and so forth. The second thing is that sometimes you can dramatically cut costs, but it changes the package. And you need to be able to speak to your consumers, whoever they are, about why this is better for them. Because if they can love the new package, despite the changes, then you have a winner. If you just try to sneak, some cost savings in that degrade their experience, well, that's not going to work. And then the last one is the big, massive opportunities that we saw throughout history are ones where there was a very bold company or organization or industry that decided to make a shift and educate people. The example, and we'll talk a little bit more, is when the industry went from metal coffee cans to flexible bags. Imagine being the first company that decided to do that, sacrifice all your investments to date, and invest in a new technology. Pretty scary, but it's taken over the marketplace and really driven great results.
So key point number 1 is talking about how to optimize the packaging and the supply chain.
Yeah. So like I said, this is one that we can't forget about these basics, right? We had a great example Mary brought up. I believe it was Frito-Lay, where they found that when they put potato chips in a bag, if they just gave it a gentle shake, they would settle a little bit to the bottom, and therefore the bag didn't need to be as big. Right. And so because the bag wasn't as big, well, they were spending less on material, they could fit more in a case, and got all kinds of benefits. Their consumers also loved it because they were opening the bags and saying, hey, this used to look half full, and now it looks a little bit fuller. So it was really just a win all around, right? And that they got just by looking to say, how can we use a little bit less material? And we had a very rich discussion. Colin had a lot of comments here. I just have a little short one here. But it's really around also thinking behind the scenes in the supply chain. If you can tweak your package a little bit so that you get more in a corrugated case, you get more in a truck, you get more in a warehouse, all the same volume, then you get amazing benefits, right? That some of them are direct in terms of material. Some of them are indirect, right? A truck full of product going across the country is going to use the same amount of gas, whether or not, has 10,000 packs in it or whether it has 9,000 packs in it.
I love key point number 2 because it's hard to go back and think about what a risk it was to change from a metal can, which everybody knew and expected, to go into a plastic bag or another kind of a device. Man, that's a ballsy move, right?
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, imagine yourself being the executive that had to make that decision. So your company had invested millions of dollars in a supply chain to do metal cans, packing lines to put coffee into metal cans, and your consumers expected a metal can. And imagine being the guy that said, you know what, I'm going to scrap all of that and I'm going to invest in the future. And obviously you want to take those bets with the right amount of data and the right amount of advisement. But it really is these big fundamental ones that unlock the biggest opportunity. And the way that people get to that, they ignore the barriers for a moment and say, okay, what would the future look like if I was 10 years forward in the future and I had converted to flexible bags in this case? How much would I save? What benefits could I give the consumer? What could I do? And if that's compelling, well, then you take on the challenge of getting there, right? And that's an industry that's obviously done that. So once again, big paradigm shifts, not easy to do, but they unlock things that just run away like wildfire. So there are big opportunities out there, right, that we shouldn't hold back from just because they seem insurmountable. If the end goal looks attractive, then start asking yourself, what do I need to do to reach that? How can I chip away at this piece by piece?
Brad, one thing that's going on right now that you see a lot of controversy and a lot of conversation about is the straw, the plastic straw, which is, I guess, another example of, oh no, what are we going to do now?
Well, exactly. And so this point, one thing is to save money versus where we are today. But the other is to say, what's going to kill me 3, 4, 5 years from now? And so I imagine the plastic straw manufacturers aren't very happy, right? If they had put themselves, 5, 10 years ago and said, how do we tackle the sustainability challenge? Make these recyclable, prevent the ocean waste issues and so forth, develop alternatives, right? Then they would probably be in a better place. So that forward casting to avoid these big risks is a big one. We also have a lot of this is sustainability. It's not all of it. We need to think proactively about solutions that either negate the problem or give us an alternative.
Now, in key point number 4, which I think is really fascinating, is this idea of making the package irresistible, because there's several different conversations here going on simultaneously, right?
Yep. So, for this one, there's a lot of ways to save money in your packaging that the consumer doesn't even know. So if I redesign the shape a little bit or the case so I fit more onto a truck, that's pretty invisible. You're not going to realize it. But some of them, you need to. So the metal coffee can to flexible bag. Well, that's pretty obvious, But if you can figure out, how this change can address a core consumer need, then you start unlocking and people start asking for it. With flexible bags in coffee, it takes up a lot less space, right? And as you use it, it takes up less and less space. That's an attractive thing for the consumer. The other example here, which is really compelling for me, is the world of e-commerce. So we're starting to see more and more companies that are designing packages for e-commerce to meet the needs there, which may be different than if the package is on the shelf. If the package is on the shelf, it needs to shout out at you. It needs to grab your attention. So people tend to use a lot of flashy, expensive decoration that's really just designed to catch your eye. Where if it's in your house, if it's on e-commerce, you don't need that. And when it's in your house, you don't want this big, ugly package sitting on your countertop. You want something beautiful and elegant, right? Which might not catch your attention if it was in the store. So that's another example that I've seen where companies have done a great job of tapping into that core consumer need. In this case, people wanting something more simple, simplistic, and not as gaudy, delivering that need, right? But along the way, delivering some savings because they're not invested in the things that you need for the shelf.
So many great ideas came out of this panel. Tell us about the 3 that really stood out.
So Miguel, Francisco, and Mary, they definitely contributed the most to the discussion. And, contributing in these panels is not just providing ideas. These guys all gave fantastic ideas. It's also engaging and building on each other's ideas, each other's posts. And you end up taking them in directions which are a bit unexpected sometimes, but give you some fantastic insights. And as you see here, right, the 3 of these folks come from very different backgrounds, right?
Yeah, very.
And so it was great. They actually, all 3 were active on a lot of discussions. And so, what we found was very different points of view coming out that you wouldn't get if it was just one person thinking about this themselves.
Okay, that's great. So, hey, thank you so much, Brad. You've made this really fascinating and interesting. Great job facilitating the panel, and I look forward to chatting with you again next time.
Absolutely. It's going to be great.